Before we even begin today, just want to say to you, wherever you are right now, may God bless your day and, well, may God bless your entire week ahead.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
So we are dropping you straight into a pretty terrifying scene today for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Picture yourself standing on the muddy banks of a churning, freezing flash flood.
Not exactly a relaxing vacation spot.
No, not at all. And you're surrounded by, hundreds of thousands of tired refugees who have been wandering a desert for 40 years.
Right?
And this violent river is basically the only thing standing between you and the end of that massive journey.
It's an incredibly intense moment.
It is. And our goal today is to examine this exact moment, specifically looking at Joshua chapter 3. And we're going to unpack the insights from two really comprehensive Portuguese study Bibles, the Holman and the NAA.
Which offers some fantastic commentary, by the way.
Well, they really do. We're looking at a story that blends brilliant ancient cinematic storytelling with geological anomalies, massive logistical challenges, and, well, an event that completely shifted the geopolitical reality of an entire people.
Yeah, it really is a monumental piece of text. We're capturing the Israelites at this huge inflection point.
Right.
To fully grasp the tension of this moment, I mean, we really need to locate them physically and psychologically. So they're currently camped at a place called Shittim.
And Shittim isn't just like a random spot on the map, is it? I mean, there is a very heavy historical footprint there.
A very heavy one, yeah. The study notes remind us that Shittim is the exact location where, earlier in the Israelites' history, a figure named Balaam was actually hired to curse them.
Oh, right. The cursing incident.
Exactly. He tried repeatedly to curse them, and he completely failed every time. So as they are packing up their tents now, there's already this lingering atmosphere of divine protection over the camp.
Like, they know they're safe there.
Right, but now they have to leave that protected space. They're moving up to the very edge of the Jordan River, looking right across at Canaan.
And I think this is where a lot of our modern assumptions completely betray us,
How so?
Well, if you visit the Jordan River today, or even just see photos of it online, you usually see a fairly calm, quiet river.
Yeah, that's true.
In some places, it honestly looks like a narrow stream you could casually just wade across.
Huh.
But the historical and geographical data completely shatters that peaceful image. We really need to talk about the physical reality of what they were actually staring down.
Yeah, because the physical reality back then is dictated entirely by the calendar. The biblical text explicitly mentions that this is all happening during the time of the harvest.
Which means springtime, right? The barley harvest.
Right, and during the spring, the Jordan River undergoes this violently dramatic transformation. You have the culmination of heavy winter rains, but more importantly, you have a massive influx of melting snow.
From Mount Hermon, right?
Yes, exactly. Rushing down from Mount Hermon, which is far to the north, and all of that water channels directly down into the Jordan Valley.
The numbers provided by the NAA notes here are just staggering to me. Because of that aggressive snowmelt, the river had completely breached its banks.
It's basically unrecognizable.
Totally. We are talking about a river swelling to over 30 meters wide. So to put that in perspective for you, imagine a professional basketball court.
Okay.
Now imagine that entire length, end to end, as just a raging torrent of brown water. And the depth was up to 3 meters, so nearly 10 feet deep.
Which is incredibly dangerous. And you have to factor in the velocity of the water and the debris, too.
Oh, right, the debris.
Yeah, the Holman translation notes point out that this specific stretch of the Jordan wasn't some clean, straight channel. It was winding, it was treacherous, and the banks were historically covered in these dense, overgrown thickets.
So it's not just a lot of water.
No, it's a violently churning flash flood. It's carrying mud, broken branches, whole uprooted trees.
Wow. So place yourself in that crowd. You've got men, women, children, the elderly, all the livestock, just standing on this muddy bank looking at a 30-meter-wide meat grinder of freezing water.
The panic must have been palpable.
It must have been terrifying. And what is so brilliant about this text is that the author didn't just, record the dry facts. They actually encoded that anxiety into the very structure of the writing itself.
Yeah, the structural analysis from the NAA is really fascinating here. The writer of Joshua employed what we would almost call a cinematic technique today.
Like a movie director.
Exactly. Instead of just a dry historical log, the narrative is built by rapidly shifting the perspective, like cutting between different camera angles to build up the tension.
Okay, so it repeats the same sequence of events, but zooms in each time.
That's it, exactly. First, you get the wide establishing shot. You see the broad anticipation of the entire camp, realizing they have to cross this thing. Then it cuts to a tighter shot. You see the very specific, granular preparations being made by the leadership. And finally, it cuts to the action sequence, the raw execution of them actually moving toward the water.
Oh, that's such a cool way to look at it.
And to really drive that tension home, the text relentlessly pounds on a single Hebrew keyword. The word is abar, which means to pass or to cross.
I think the note said it's used over 20 times just in chapters 3 and 4.
Yes, passover, crossover, pass through. It functions almost like a heartbeat in a thriller movie score.
Oh, wow.
Right. Reading it, that repetition subconsciously builds the sheer scale of the obstacle in your mind. You feel the psychological weight and the desperate urgency of this movement before anyone even takes a single step toward the mud.
Which naturally brings up a massive logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, if the river is an impassable force of nature and you have hundreds of thousands of terrified people, how do you move them without triggering a mass panic or, a deadly stampede?
They obviously need a guide.
Right, they need a guide. And that guide is the Ark of the Covenant carried by the priests. But the specific rules for following the Ark, well, they reveal a lot about crowd dynamics and ancient reverence.
They really do.
Those rules are exactly what I want to dig into next, because on the surface, they seem completely counterproductive.
How so?
Well, Joshua tells this massive crowd to follow the Ark, but then strictly orders them to leave a massive gap. The text says 2,000 cubits, which the notes translate to about 1 kilometer.
That is a very large distance.
It's massive.
Yeah.
If I'm navigating a deadly obstacle course, I want my guide right next to me. I want to see exactly where they're stepping. If you put my guide of a full kilometer ahead of me, I'm going to feel completely abandoned. Why on earth create such a massive buffer?
Well, it definitely feels isolating on an individual level, sure. But you have to zoom out and look at the macro scale of the crowd.
Okay.
The notes outline 2 highly functional reasons for this gap. The first one is just pure, brutal practicality. Joshua tells them, quote, "You haven't passed this way before. You have to visualize the footprint of this camp. A crowd of that size is basically a sprawling, mobile city."
Yeah, I guess if the Ark is right at the front line, maybe, the first 100 people can see it?
Precisely. If it's right up front, the tens of thousands of people in the middle and the back are completely blind to it. And when people in a massive crowd can't see where they are going, especially near a dangerous environmental hazard like a raging flood, they just push forward.
And that's how you get a crowd crush.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
incredibly dangerous. By forcing the Ark to stay a full kilometer ahead, elevated on the shoulders of the priests, it completely changes the geometry of the situation.
Ah, it acts like a lighthouse.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, you don't stand at the base of a lighthouse to navigate, right?
Oh.
You need it far out on the horizon so the beam can guide ships from all different angles. By pushing it a kilometer out, almost everyone in that massive, sprawling crowd can just look up and orient themselves toward that single golden speck in the distance.
That is exactly how to visualize it. It solves the logistical crisis of moving a city. But the second reason for the 1 kilometer gap is deeply spiritual. It's rooted in strict reverence.
This connects back to Mount Sinai, doesn't it?
It sure does. The Holman notes draw a direct line between this moment and Exodus. The Ark represents the literal sacred presence of God among the Israelites.
Right.
Back at Mount Sinai, when the divine presence descended, the people were commanded to maintain a very strict physical boundary from that holiness. The Ark carries that exact same lethal weight.
I think we have a bad habit of treating ancient artifacts in these texts like, magical objects, like a magic wand or something. But the NWA notes make a very careful distinction here.
A vital distinction, yes. The Ark is not a magic talisman. It doesn't just emit some sci-fi force field that automatically stops the water. In fact, the commentators reference a later, really tragic event in 1 Samuel where the Israelites actually try to use the Ark like a weapon. They carry it into battle, assuming it'll magically guarantee a win, and it completely fails. The Philistines actually capture it.
Wow, okay. So it's definitely not a weapon you just wield.
No, not at all. Treating it like a magical object is like trying to wield a massive lightning rod without understanding how electricity works. You're just going to get yourself killed.
Right, that makes sense.
The reverence required here, that 1 kilometer gap, it's about acknowledging divine sovereignty. It is a physical, spatial reminder to the entire nation that God is leading them into this danger, and they are following on his terms, not their own military strategy.
And following on those terms required some serious preparation, too. Joshua issues a command to the people. He says, "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders."
Yes.
I want to pause on that word wonders, because the notes point out that Joshua isn't just using a generic term for something cool happening.
No, he is being incredibly precise with his language. The Hebrew word translated as wonders here is the exact same vocabulary used to describe the plagues in Egypt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Joshua is intentionally triggering their deepest cultural memory. He is essentially telling them the exact same power that dismantled the greatest empire on earth is about to manifest right here in this floodwater.
That raises the stakes immensely. I mean, if the power that broke Egypt is showing up tomorrow, how do you even, quote unquote, sanctify yourself today? What does that actually look like for an average person in that camp?
Well, sanctification was a holistic shock to their system. Physically, it meant washing their bodies and their clothes. It also involved temporarily abstaining from sexual relations, which mirrors the instructions given back in Exodus 19.
So it's clearly not just about hygiene.
Not at all. It is a behavioral and psychological reset.
Sure.
Think about it. When you are wandering in a desert for decades, you fall into a daily grinding routine just to survive.
Sure, you're on autopilot?
Exactly. Sanctification was a way of violently interrupting that autopilot. It forced every single person to stop, physically alter their routine, and consciously focus their entire mental capacity on the divine event that was about to unfold.
Okay, so they're mentally and physically primed. The massive 1 kilometer gap is established. The massive crowd is watching. But eventually, the preparations have to end, right? Someone actually has to walk into the flood.
Yes, the rubber has to meet the road.
And to me, this is where the human element of the text becomes staggeringly brave. The priests carrying the ark have to go first.
It is arguably one of the most intense tests of faith in all the historical texts.
Because we naturally compare this to the Red Sea crossing, don't we? But the mechanics are completely different.
Totally different.
With Moses at the Red Sea, he stood on the dry shore, he held out his staff, and the water split. The path cleared before they had to walk. But here, the priests are carrying a heavy chest made of wood and gold on poles. They are walking down a muddy bank toward a 30-meter wide, churning flash flood. And the water isn't moving out of the way, it's not parting. They have to literally plunge their bare feet into the freezing, rushing edge of the river before anything changes.
They had to entirely commit to the danger. There was no preemptive safety net this time. The text makes it clear the waters would not yield a single inch until human skin broke the surface of that flood.
Just imagine the terror of that final step, feeling the mud slip under your toes, hearing the roar of the water, and just praying you aren't instantly swept under.
It's chilling to think about.
But the moment their feet touch the water, the river stops. However, it doesn't just form a neat little wall of water right in front of their noses. The geographical details provided by the sources here completely redefine the scale of this event.
They really do. The mechanics of the water stopping are fascinating. The water that was already flowing downstream southward toward the Dead Sea, which is referred to in the text as the Sea of Arabah, was completely cut off. It just drained away.
Just kept going south.
Right. The Holman notes estimate that this draining effectively emptied out roughly 29% of the entire Jordan Valley's water flow.
Wow. So it just empties out, leaving this massive, wide expanse of muddy riverbed. But what happens to the millions of gallons of water rushing down from Mount Hermon in the north?
Well, the text says it rose up in a heap, and this is another deliberate linguistic echo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the word heap is the exact same word used in the ancient poetic songs celebrating the Red Sea crossing back in Exodus 15. But as you noted, this massive heaping up of water didn't happen 10 feet away from the priests.
Right. This is the part that completely blew my mind. The NAA notes identify exactly where this happened. The water stopped at a city called Adam, which is the modern-day archaeological site of Tel Damai.
And we really need to look at the distance there because it's significant.
It is about 27 to 29 kilometers north of where they were crossing opposite Jericho. That is like 17 to 18 miles upstream.
Right.
So the priests put their feet in the water, and nearly 30 kilometers away, the river dams up. And this is where the historical geology becomes incredibly relevant to the story. The study notes highlight that the specific area around Tel Damai is heavily unstable, geologically speaking.
Very unstable.
In 1927, there was a massive earthquake in that exact region.
And the high clay banks of the river there are highly susceptible to seismic activity.
Exactly. The earthquake in 1927 caused the towering banks of the Jordan to completely collapse, triggering a monumental mudslide. That massive wall of earth fell directly into the river channel and completely choked it off.
Amazing.
Yeah, it formed a natural dam that blocked the flow of the Jordan River for 21 and a half hours.
So we actually have a documented historical mechanism for exactly how this river can be dammed upstream. And this raises a really profound point about how we understand miracles, which the experts who compiled these notes synthesize beautifully.
Yeah, I love this part.
If we overlay this geological reality onto the biblical account, the miracle isn't necessarily a suspension of physics.
Right, it doesn't have to be like a magical invisible glass wall holding the
Right.
water back.
Exactly. Whether God utilized a massive, supernaturally triggered mudslide 29 kilometers upstream or use another method entirely, the theological focus of the text is purely on the timing.
The absolute precision of
It
it.
is flawless providential timing. Consider the sequence here. A blockage occurs 30 kilometers away. It takes time for the remaining water south of that blockage to flow past Jericho and drain into the Dead Sea.
Right.
The miracle is that the water finishes draining out, exposing the dry ground, at the exact fraction of a second that the priests commit to stepping into the brim of the floodwaters. It is this incredible orchestration of natural forces and divine will that just leaves you staggered.
It really does. It allows hundreds of thousands of people spread out over this massive area to cross a wide swath of dry ground safely. And they've got the ark acting as their distant lighthouse the whole time. So they step out of the riverbed and onto the soil of Canaan. It is a massive physical and logistical triumph. But the sources are very clear that the physical crossing is actually secondary to the psychological and societal shift that just occurred.
Oh, absolutely.
We need to look at what this meant for their leadership, specifically Joshua.
Joshua was in an incredibly precarious position here. He is stepping into the massive void left by Moses.
Which are huge shoes to fill.
Exactly. How do you possibly lead a nation when your predecessor was the man who split the Red Sea, destroyed Egypt, and spoke to God on a mountain? Joshua must have been dealing with the ultimate case of imposter syndrome, and the people surely had their doubts about him.
But the text says God explicitly promised Joshua, quote, "Today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel."
And this crossing is Joshua's validation. It is his Red Sea moment. By stopping the Jordan, it proved to every single person in that camp that the presence and power of God wasn't just tied to the personality of Moses.
Right.
The exact same divine backing was now resting squarely on Joshua.
And Joshua weaponizes this miracle immediately to build their courage, right? Because Canaan is not a vacant lot. They aren't just crossing into an empty pasture.
No, not at all.
They are walking into a heavily contested region filled with fortified cities and established armies. Joshua uses the dry riverbed as absolute proof that the living God is walking among them. He explicitly lists the formidable groups waiting for them.
And it's a long list.
It is. The Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites.
It's a terrifying roster. That's 7 distinct, established, militarized nations. I mean, think about it. If the Israelites had just spent 3 weeks building rafts and slowly, painfully ferrying people across the flood, they would have arrived on the other side feeling like a tired, vulnerable, scrappy group of survivors.
It would have been totally demoralized.
Completely. But because the river bowed to the Ark of the Covenant, they arrive possessing an unshakable psychological armor. They know the God of all the earth has cleared the path for them.
Which leads us to the ultimate grand takeaway from the NWA study notes. The crossing completely shifts their identity, and you can actually see it in the very language the text uses to describe them.
Yes, and this is perhaps the most profound insight in the entire analysis. For centuries, through their brutal enslavement in Egypt, and through 4 decades of wandering aimlessly in the wilderness, the biblical text refers to Israel as a people.
Okay.
In the Portuguese notes we're looking at, the word is povo.
A multitude, basically, like a demographic.
Right. Povo implies a large group, a shared ethnicity, or just a wandering crowd. But it does not imply sovereignty. You cannot be a sovereign nation when you are enslaved in a foreign empire, and you cannot be a nation when you are wandering endlessly in international unclaimed territory.
You need borders. You need actual land to have sovereignty.
Exactly. The geopolitical mechanism of nationhood requires a territorial footprint, and that is why this crossing is the crucible. The moment they step out of the dry riverbed of the Jordan, the very moment their feet physically plant onto the territorial soil of the Promised Land, the language permanently changes. They are no longer a povo. They finally become a nation, a nation,
It is the final realization of the promise.
The promise made centuries prior, all the way back in Genesis 12, when God told Abraham, I will make of you a great nation. It took generations of suffering, slavery, plagues, wandering, and one final terrifying flash flood.
Yeah.
But crossing the Jordan was the threshold where a wandering crowd finally forged themselves into an established nation.
That is just incredible. To trace the sheer scale of that journey from a promise to a wandering crowd to a massive logistical challenge, culminating in the bravery of taking that one step into the freezing flood.
It really is an epic narrative.
It is. And that actually brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. We spent a lot of time discussing how those priests had to get their feet wet before the waters start flowing from 29 kilometers away.
Right, they had to move first.
Exactly. They were required to physically commit to the danger before they ever saw the miracle. It really makes you wonder, where in your own life are you standing on the bank, waiting for the path to clear completely, when perhaps you were required to take that very first terrifying step into the water before the obstacle actually moves?
That's a really powerful question.
Think about that as you navigate the rest of your week. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into Joshua chapter 3.
Yeah.
Goodbye, and may God bless you all.